Hello everyone, and welcome to Happy Nightmares, the whole story. My name is Patrick, and I am a writer of scary stories and the creator of Happy Nightmares. Since this channel is based around fiction, even though it has branched out into true scary stories as well as creepy music, I thought there might be some viewers out there interested in the ideas behind the stories and what the driving motivation was while I was writing them. I am very interested to see if people like this because obviously it's going to have a very different tone from all of the other content on this channel. If you do enjoy it, please hit that thumbs up button at the bottom of the screen and leave a comment to let me know so that I know what you want to see and hear. I'm going to talk about the first story I uploaded to Happy Nightmares, Watch the Child, and I'll just go ahead and start with a spoiler alert. I strongly recommend that if you are interested in the background of this story, you should actually experience the story first. I have linked to part 1 in the description, and you should be able to get to part 2 pretty easily from there. Total, it's about 40 minutes. I am going to spoil pretty much everything here in a very anticlimactic way, so don't let this ruin it for you. Plus, the background is going to make a lot more sense if you are familiar with the story. Now, that out of the way, let's begin. From the library of short stories that I've written, Watch the Child is one of my favorites for a lot of reasons, which is why I wanted to start with it on the channel. This was not the first short story I ever wrote, but it was my first attempt at writing multiple storylines that converge at some point. My favorite authors are masters of this on a much more complicated level than I attempted with this one. I started small, only 3 main characters. The story really started with Mark. Mark is the obvious victim here, though not the primary victim, and I'll discuss that in a moment. When I started writing this story, I didn't have an outline of how the story was going to play out. I've tried that many times, to sit down and write backstories for the characters and come up with an outline with all of the main points and places I wanted them to go, and where I thought the story was going to lead, and I've never had much luck with that. So typically, I've got an idea and I just start writing. Susan's story really overlaps with Mark's right from the beginning. And the purpose of Susan is really just to give one outsider's perspective of what is going on with Mark, and also to serve as a way for the reader to identify with the many other people who are impacted by what Mark is going through. When I said that Mark wasn't the primary victim, what I meant was that the primary victims are really everyone else whose lives are indirectly altered, even in a small way, by what is taking place with Mark. Mark isn't a very likable guy. He is a young, arrogant womanizer. He is in great shape. He has plenty of money. He is a salesman. Readers generally start off with a distaste for this character right from the beginning, and so there is almost a feeling of justification when Mark's control over his world is taken away from him. But then, who can you feel bad for as a reader? Well, how about Susan? How about all of the other people in the mob going after Mark because of his stroll into the streets of his town? Eventually Chris, who serves as the most separated character of the story. While his morning commute is postponed because of the traffic accidents caused by Mark, he isn't drastically impacted until the end, when Mark's body comes crashing through his windshield. Even the woman in the car next to Chris, who is trying to tell him about the guy who is about to jump off of the overpass, her world is now completely rocked by what has happened. Eventually, there may be some empathy for Mark. Everyone is ticked off at him, even though he has zero control over what is happening, and he eventually loses his life, which can't really be ignored. All of these people who are impacted by what is happening to Mark really encompasses one of the 2 main themes of the story, which is that one person's actions can have a dramatic impact on many, many people. take out the paranormal elements of the story, which pains me to say because that's what I love to write, but if you take all of that out, you are left with one man doing his own thing without regard for the safety and well-being of anyone else around him. In the story, Mark doesn't have control over this, but in real life, we do have control over the decisions we make, and often we are driven to look out for number one without any in-depth consideration for how our actions are impacting others down the line. I would say that, on some level, we're pushed to these decisions by our individual circumstances. Money can't buy happiness, but it is necessary to live and survive in this capitalist-driven world. This is really the basis for the second main theme of the story, which is that we really don't have as much control over our own lives as we wish we did. And that's one of the things that was going through my head as I was kind of working through this story is this is really an embellishment of that lack of control we have over our own lives. The ghost of the little girl who serves as a physical manifestation of whatever has taken control of Mark's mind is really a representation of everything in our lives that takes control away from us. As I mentioned, in many ways, we are captives of the paycheck. For those of us who work a regular job, we live our lives based on someone else's schedule. We have to be to work at a certain time. We have to stay there for a certain number of hours. Sometimes travel is required. We have to miss important life events. If you're lucky enough to be your own boss and run your own company, you may have some more flexibility in your schedule, but you still have to work for profitability, which means you have to put in the time. Outside of work, you make sacrifices for your loved ones or children to make sure that they have good lives and get to do the things that they want to do or need to do. I'm not saying that all of this is bad or any of it is bad, or that you should do things one way or another way, or that people should be selfish and start only worrying about what they want to do. Only a recognition that more often than not, our day-to-day activities are not decided upon by us. My goal with this story was to take these real-life, everyday frustrations that I deal with and you deal with, we all deal with, and put them into a format where they become entertaining for the people who deal with the same frustrations on a regular basis. Those daily struggles aren't going anywhere, and so transforming them into something like a story that can be enjoyed allows us to look at them in a bit of a different light. And honestly, that's really where the name of this whole channel came from. Happy Nightmares. The nightmares exist. There are scary things in the world that are real, that aren't going anywhere, that we live every day in fear of. And so the goal of writing scary stories and loving to write scary stories is basically taking things that we fear and turning them into a form of entertainment, using those things that we're afraid of to bring some joy into our lives, to put a smile on our faces. Not everybody enjoys scary stories, but for those who do, it's an escape from the real fears that we have to live with every single day. I hope that you enjoyed this look into the story behind Watch the Child. If you haven't gotten a chance to listen to the story yet, please check it out. There will be a link to part 1 at the end of this video. If you liked hearing more about why I wrote this story, please hit the thumbs up button and let me know in the comments why you enjoyed it, and if there are other kinds of videos you'd like to see from this channel. Happy Nightmares has a lot to offer, from scary fiction to true ghost stories to creepy music, and now these in-depth looks into the mind of a horror author. Make sure you hit that red subscribe button if you haven't already done so, to make sure you don't miss out on whatever content you like the best. Thank you so much for listening. Come back soon, and as always,
Happy Nightmares.